start. Okay. Well, good. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me put the gallery first. And tonight we have a very special. He's not a guest. He's our mentor. We're gonna learn a lot from him tonight. Actually, we have him. We have the pleasure to have him here before, but he will be teaching us all the advantage of the parametric received audio system and other stuff. But we mainly focus on that. I think that's the next um, Heil item that I'm going to have in my chat the radio, which I enjoy all the Heil product. So welcome, Mr. Judel Papa Zulu 2 Yankee Tango, Mr. Echo America A, X-Ray November X-Ray Eagle, and Randy K0 Romeo India Bravo. Bob Mentes, November United 3 Queen. Thank you for being here. We're gonna pass now the mic to Mr. Bob. We're gonna listen to his presentation, and after that, we're gonna ask questions. Let's move. We're gonna mute everybody. Bob, Mr. Heil. Go ahead, Bob.
Thanks, Alex. Always appreciated being with you and all your friends, and greetings to all of you. And who knows how far around the world is watching today. That's great. Well, we have so much we can always talk about, but I just love to share the science of this hobby. That's the whole deal, is that not a lot of this is being done today. And we have so many things going on that we need to know about. And most of it goes back into the 1920s. But I guess people figure, well, it's old, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it really does. And one of the interesting parts of it is that equalization has become a really big deal these days. But in 1982, I came up with a product, and I just did it for myself. I'd been off the air for 12 years. I was on the rock and roll road doing audio for many of the major groups for a little bit more than 12 years. So I was off the air. And when I came back, I couldn't believe it. What happened to my great Art Collins audio was terrible. What did you guys do to this? And I started listening, and this is the kind of thing I heard. CQ, field day, CQ, field day, CQ, field day. What happened to this? All big, bassy, distorted audio. There was no nice, clean audio. But once in a while, I would hear somebody that had it right, but most of it was not there.
Thank you. Copy 3 Alpha Sierra Delta.
And so I said, wait a minute, I have to do something about this. And I'm always building, always doing things. And I built what I call the EQ200. It was a little box that had 2-band EQ in it. And through learning a lot about the frequency responses and what the human being needed to hear, I came up with 160 hertz on the low filter and 2.5K on the treble filter. Just 2 bands, and plus or minus 12, 13, 14 dB, something like that. So you could boost and you could notch those 2 frequencies. And I decided through many, many hours on the air with some of my buddies. I was on 7240 when I came back on the air. And we had about 5 or 6 people that were really into audio. And we're not talking about this DJ, bassy, boomy. I'm talking about audio that was articulate. We could understand what each other said. And I came up with these 2 frequencies, 160 on the low end. And I can give you a great demonstration of this very easily. there's 160 coming up, and as you see, it took all the articulation away. It was not good. And so I said, okay, we have to cut that. So if we take it out, but the other thing was the 2.5K. And I learned this from the scientist at Bell Labs that found out back in the 1920s how important. Listen intently when I bring up 2.5K. When I do, you'll start hearing the essence of sound, the super, super sonic, beautiful S's. The F's and the S are all right there. If I don't have that and I take that 2.5 out, the essence of sound is gone. And this is what I hear on most of the signals that don't want to use equalization. Let me put that back. Look how important that is. That mid-range is so important. Even if I just whisper, it's so cool. If I take it out, it's difficult to understand what I said. So one thing you want to take away from this is to make sure you have some type of equalization that will give you that 2.5. We're going to get into this because there's a great history behind that. But I built this little equalizer strictly for me. I didn't know where it was going. And I wrote an article. It appeared in QST. I sent it in to the ARRL. They called me and they said, this is a revelation. I'm going, really? Because I didn't know. I hadn't been around in a long time. I figured surely somebody would have come up with equalization in those years I was gone. No. And so they published it. It was the lead article, and I got the cover award, July 1982. I wrote it as a do-it-yourself article. I had all the great diagrams and layouts, all of the parts you would need, but it backfired on me. I did a silly thing. I put my phone number in there, and I started getting all kinds of phone calls from guys and gals that they wanted to buy it. They didn't want to build it. Instant gratification. I want it now. And I had closed our plant. We had spent, 15, 16 years building speakers and amplifiers and all of this for the rock concerts and tours that we did. Had 7,000 square foot building and 35 people doing all this. That's where we built the famous talk box for Peter Frampton and Joe Walsh and all that. Well, I had closed it in 1980. When punk rock came in, I said, bye-bye. I wanted no part. So I had a couple of years where the plant was closed and we opened it, and that was our entrance to Heil sound in the amateur radio industry. That is it, our first product. Well, what had happened was back while I was on the road years back, I got a phone call from Paul Klipsch. Paul Klipsch is the father of the hi-fi movement. He was the father of the folded horn. He was an amazing guy. And I couldn't believe it when I picked up the phone and he said, "That you, Heil?" And I said, "Yes, sir. That's Klipsch here." And I'm going, oh man, I dropped a phone almost. I couldn't believe it. This is the god of audio calling me? Why? He said, "You got that 10,000 watt PA I've been hearing about?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I want to come and see it." So he got in his airplane and he flew his Bonanza up to Marissa, Illinois, which was my home in Southern Illinois, about 50 miles southeast of St. Louis. All day long, it was like, why did you do this? Well, how come you did this at this way? Where'd you learn this? Well, ham radio. No. What school did you go to? I didn't go to school. I barely made it out of the high school. I had called when I was in my last years to find out how many days I had to be there. And I think it was 86 or 89. And that was it. Had a calendar and we checked it off. the man that had hired me to play the organ at the Fox Theater in St. Louis, he needed me. And we didn't have time for anything else, especially school. And I was doing financially extremely well as a young kid at that big organ in the Fox. And what was really good about that while I'm here, I learned to listen. And not only did Stan Can, the organist there, hire me as a substitute, but he took me under his wing, taught me more how to play it, and he needed somebody to help him voice and tune nearly 4,000 pipes in that organ, from 1 inch to 32 foot. And that is where I learned to listen. Hearing is just, I hear. Listening is a mental process. Not a lot of people listen. They only hear. Listening is you go in and you listen to all of the harmonics. You listen to all of the minuscule distortion that might be there. Or, of course, you can hear a lot of distortion, but if you really listen, sometimes it's just above the threshold. And you need to know all these things. You need to know the different frequencies. You need to learn that 2.5K is so important. We'll get back into that in a minute. But anyway, I was just so fortunate to be able to have all of this happen as a young kid. But Paul Klipsch was he was very inquisitive about this, and he couldn't believe it. Well, then where did you learn all this? I learned it from ham radio. Ham radio? Yes, sir. That's where I learned to build. That's where I learned to spend a lot of my time. And so we did that all day long. He put me in his airplane, flew me back to Hope, Arkansas, where he lived, and he had this really great laboratory. It was an old telephone exchange back in the 20s when the telephone company was trying to get started, but they vacated it, and he ended up with it in the 1940s for his laboratory. And I couldn't believe it because it was just, I could do a whole hour just on that alone. But anyway, Paul guided me in the 2 days that I was down there with him. He guided me to the early telephone systems. They didn't work well. They were mushy. There was no clear speech articulation. So what to do? And the situation was what I played a minute ago. They put the telephone system together in the early 20s, 2 wires from New Jersey to California. And every 50 miles across America was a relay station to keep the level up, to keep the frequency up, keep the distortion down, all of that. But when they got to the end of the line, got it all hooked up, they picked up the telephone in New Jersey, and one of the scientists picked up the phone in California. This is what they heard. It was like, wait a minute. What happened? Because this isn't what we put in. And what is the problem? And so what they did, they had their 4,000 scientists. I'll get this back so you can understand me. Yes, I said 4,000 scientists that were at Bell Labs in the 1920s. So they all started working on what was the problem. I mean, after all, these people were really working hard to make the telephone system work, and it wasn't going to work the way they envisioned it. So they put 2 of their leading scientists on the project, Dr. Harvey Fletcher and Dr. Weldon Munson. If you don't know about the Fletcher-Munson curve, you're about to know, and I want you to realize how very important it is to any of us that deal with audio. And I don't care what kind of audio. If it's audio, Fletcher-Munson had played a big part in it. What they discovered was this: we do not hear flat. And you'll see a lot of people that don't know about this, and they'll argue with you till all the cows come home. No. And we all hear like this. And the louder it is, you look up at the top of that graph at 110 dB, 100 dB, it's almost flat. Well, that's pretty good. That's why kids like to listen to music loud, because they hear all the cymbals in the top end, they hear all the bass in the bottom end, they hear all the mid-range. They like it loud. But you look down here where you're listening right now, down there about 20 dB level. And so they discovered that since our ears were very sensitive in that mid-range, this is what they decided had to happen to the telephone system. They discovered the problem. But now, how were they going to do this? There was nothing like an equalizer. So what they did, the scientists, 4,000 of them, they came up with building just a high-pass filter with the correct value of a capacitor and a correct value of a resistor to ground. If they put that full range audio into that cap, there's the equation if you really want to do it. But by the size of the cap and the size of the resistor, they could pass that 2.5 and take out all that low end. They also had to build a low pass filter to take care of the lows. And it's just the reverse of that. It comes into the resistor, the highs go to ground, and away you go. And of course, not very many highs. But the term equalizer was actually born then. And it had its origins in that early telephone experiment. And the losses in the highs and the lows over the long lines, it had to be corrected. And of course, we couldn't hear. And so with the high pass and low pass filter, it was on the road. The telephone system made it. And it made it because they could do this. No matter what you do, and no matter what you take away from this hour, take this away. This is so important for speech communications. It's what the telephone systems have as an equalization. So you want to make sure that when you're doing things, this is what it's going to look like, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. But the deal is that they had to set up that frequency range with the use of the high pass and the low pass filter. But it was all fixed. They soldered in these resistors, and once they hit it, that was it. They got that particular response, and that was it. Equalization was never really much above that. But in the late 20s, motion pictures started to have audio, talkies. Before that, they were all silence. So here comes this guy. Look how young he was. John Volkmann. He was working at a RCA in the 1920s. And that system was first used to equalize motion picture playback systems that he developed. But what he did is he was using RC filters that we just talked about, and he had a way to switch them. And this is what he did. He had several low-pass filters and several high-pass filters. And those allowed him to select what he needed in the theater and hardwire the right filter. And once he did that, everything was great. And so we owe a lot to John Volkmann, because he really was the first guy to ever use any kind of equalization. Now comes an interesting part for you. Equalization was never talked about from 1931 or so. Once John Volkmann got all of this set and wired in his filters, that was it. Nothing happened until 1967. Back in the late 40s, 48 through 55 or so, hi-fi came into being, and they did have a minor equalization factor where they could have just a few decibel, and all it was one of John Volkmann's equalizers, and it didn't have a lot of variance. I know I had some. Hi-fi came in, I was into it, 18-year-old kid, but that was all. It wasn't anything really secure and happening until 1967. Langevin was a company that built a lot of studio gear. It was a thing that the Langevin company had built mixers and, things like that. But nothing was done until they came up in 67 with an equalizer. You'll notice there's two of these side by side. Notice the knob on the top right. They can vary it. They could set it at 15. They could set it at 3K. They could set it at 50. And so that was kind of what John Volkmann did. They could select those filters, but then the resistor that was in the filter was variable. So it was a crude way of equalizing, but it worked. And they were putting it in studio consoles. And that was a big deal. Well, it was about 69. I learned about Langevin because I was out on the rock and roll scene, but the mixers that we used were very crude. They were just little 4 and 5 channel mixers that's all we had. Didn't even have any equalization of any kind. I did Jimi Hendrix tour with that bottom green one, and we didn't have anything else. That was it. And Heil Sound was really the formal sound company in those days because we were doing a lot of power and a lot of speakers, and they sounded great. But I had some passives, but I never really had anything crazier than that. We didn't have it. But what made us happen was the fact that we were building a lot of big speakers, and we were building amplifiers, 0.5 kilowatt amplifiers for the speakers and things. And that's what drew Paul Clips to come to me. Well, in 1968, I heard about Langevin coming out with a new mixer. And I got to have this, because we were still using those little bitty guys. And so what I did is I went to Langevin and I bought their mixers. There's 2 of them in this picture. They're 8 channels each. But up above that one, you see the 2 meters on it. That's a limiter compressor. But look on the extreme right. It's hard to see it, but that was the very first graphic equalizer ever, 1968. Now, just go back a little bit and think. Nothing happened from 1930 all the way up through 67 and now 68. There they were fixed. You notice I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but 50 hertz, 150, so on, 2,000, 5,000, and you could vary it plus or minus about 15 dB. This was an amazing thing. I had a carpenter build that case for the mixers and the EQ, and Heil Sound. We were it. I mean, they were all coming to me, from the Grateful Dead to the Who and on and on. A lot of you know that history, and that's a whole hour in itself. But in 1972, Daniel Flickinger came with the first parametric. What does that mean? That means that we now had a way to change things. You see, here, all you could do was raise 12 dB or cut 10 dB at the frequencies that the engineers set. That was just all fixed EQ, just as much as this, the first equalizer in ham radio. I set the 160, I set the 2.5. You could just vary it. But you heard a while ago how very important those two frequencies were, and didn't want to make it complicated. Well, Daniel Flickinger, he came out and with this parametric. You'll notice it's a concentric control. The back control, you can go 550, 500, it went up to 15K. But the inner knob, you could boost or cut that. You could select all these different frequencies. You were the engineer. You could tell it if you wanted 2.5, if you wanted 5K to notch, or whatever you wanted to do. Parametric was great because you now could change that bandwidth filter. You were the engineer. The red one is a wide filter. The green one is a little narrower. And this is audio. This is not to be confused with your RF filtering. This is audio filtering. And we never had it until Daniel came along. Then a company by the name of Symmetrics came along. Every radio station and TV station in the world has a Symmetrics 528E. Pay attention. Please do this because it's going to mean a lot a little later on here. There are 3 filters here, just 3. But that's all you really need if you know what frequency is set. You know, I get real upset when I see these. I got a 31 band EQ. Why? We're only 3K wide in ham radio. What are you going to do with all of these down here and all of these up here? Huh? Because you don't have any, this is out of the RF filter. Forget it. It's only about 100 to 3K. That's it for ham radio. So people waste their money in buying all these exorbitant things, and they really didn't understand. Well, notice this. This is pretty cool. You see, I set this up for my AM transmitter. That's 6K wide, but check out the first filter. The first knob on the left is frequency. I set it at about 100. The second knob is the bandwidth. I have it set at about 2 octaves wide. That's how wide that filter is. You'll see here, that's the green. It's not real wide. But then the second filter, look where it is, 2.5K. Yeah. Why? You know why. And the bandwidth is about 3 octaves, which is in between that green and that red. But then you have the top filter that's set at around 6K. The bandwidth at 3 octaves. I've boosted that a little bit. I really boosted the heck out of that 2.5, of course, but I notched the 160. So you see, when you first look at that top slide there, you see all these buttons. You go, oh my gosh. Well, no, it's basically just 3 filters. That's all you need. You do not need any more. So now things were starting to really ramp up for me. By the way, right over there is my parametric. It's right there. And I use it for all of this gear above. I was on the air today for a couple of hours using this 20A. I built that as a kit when I was 18 years old. That's a Central Electronics. That's the company that brought single sideband to ham radio. It wasn't Art Collins. He was 6 years late. 1948. And I was really fortunate that I could build this stuff. And I had a great mentor who was the head engineer at CBS Radio, took me under his wing. I was one of the first 10 stations in ham radio in 1958 on single sideband. Got a kilowatt on single sideband, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, I don't know what I'd do without my symmetrics. And so it's very, very important that you understand some of this. In 1999, I got a letter from Dr. Inouye Communications, ICOM Communications. He sent me a letter and he had a picture of his station. It was their IC 781. If any of you were around in those days, what a marvelous rig that was. It was the first rig that had a screen, and that was actually a CRT tube. And he had one of my gold lines. This is the founder of ICOM. I'm going, whoa. He said, I'm thinking of new radio line, and I want to use your EQ 200 because he had found the virtue of equalization. It had not been done before in ham radio. And so starting with the Pro 1, the Pro 2, the Pro 3, all the way through to the 7300. And this little guy, wow. Any of you guys have this? Man, who's on the screen moving around so much? Whoa, making me dizzy. Let me try that. This is the 705. If you have never seen or had one of these, get it. It's a 7300 in a little bitty box, battery operated, and it has everything the 7300 has, plus D-star and 2 meters. And it has my equalizer. All icons.
I got that one for I think like 3 days because a friend of mine bought it, sent it to my home, and I set him up for him and did a video for my YouTube channel and then give it to him, and I fell in love. It's a very nice rig.
Amazing. Yep. Yeah. I drive I got an AB1 amplifier that'll get me a couple 100 watts out of it, and it's just super duper. But anyway, Dr. Inouye said, I'm thinking of this radio. And so all of the ICOMs right straight through the 7300, the 7610, the 705 has my equalizer in it. But here is the problem. A lot of guys are still in the default mode. And it really, really makes me sad because you have one of the strongest things in your transceiver and you don't use it. Why? Because you haven't learned. They haven't taught you. Their manuals are terrible. I look at these manuals and they try to tell you how to adjust the equalizers, and I don't even understand it. And I designed the crazy thing. Well, in the next couple of minutes, we're going to go through it, and everyone will be able to understand how to set equalization. If I had a 10-year-old child standing here and knew nothing about ham radio, they would also know how to do this. First of all, when you sit down at a radio, listen up. Remember what I told you about listening? When you first sit down to a radio, what's the first thing you want to do? I know, turn it on. What is it? You want to determine what I'm going to do. I'm going to write you, I'm going to DX, and you set the transmitter bandwidth for that mode. Here's the rag chew mode. We're going to set this at 100 to 2900. Then we're going to go up to the equalizer. I've already set the frequency, so you don't have to do that. You're going to notch, you're going to minus the bass, going to roll off some of that low end at 160. and you're going to increase the treble. Where is that treble filter? You know where it is. 2.5K, of course. That's where we want it. And everything's wonderful. And that happens through all of their rigs. But the graphics might be a little different. There's a 7610, there's a 7850, but you see it's all the same, -2, +4, and the whole deal. But what if you're going to do contesting, or you just want to cut through the pile up? The first thing you're going to do, you're going to set that bandwidth filter at 500 to 2500. And of course, you're going to punch up all the 2.5 you can. So wide open on the treble, minus everything on the bass. No, it's not going to sound pretty. It sounds terrible, but you are going to be the guy that's going to be top drawer. Pay attention to the screen. This is very important. And I doubt if anyone has ever helped you learn about bandwidth. You do have bandwidths in your transmitters, usually 3 of them, either 2.1, 2.4, and 2.9. What does that all mean? Well, first of all, we're going to open up. We already did that. We opened up that 500 to 2500, and 2.5 is wide open. So that door is wide open. What happens? This is what happens. You think about the air in this balloon being RF, and in the rag chute, and we're all kind of level and all that. But we want to be the top drawer. We want all of our RF. Where would you want it? I think I proved it a while ago. You want that articulation. So you opened up your 2.5, and the only door open then is 2.5. So now we're going to narrow this up from 500 to 2900. And when you do, where is it going? Your RF is going to be at 2.5. All the RF you have is going to be at the most important place in the audio spectrum because you set it there. If you want to widen it out, okay, go ahead and do that. And then you're going to lower your 2.5, and it sounds pretty. But I don't care about being pretty. I want all my RF right there. And it is so important that you do that. So you have to set that bandwidth. Then you have to set that equalizer. Don't be afraid of it. And then when you do that, everything is lovely. ICOM also asked me to build a microphone for them. These companies don't build their own microphones. This might be a real eye-awakening thing for you. Well, I came at my radio and it's got the painted same color. Yeah, it might be, but they didn't build it. I work for these people, I know. And so Dr. Inouye said, build us a proper microphone because ICOM is very special. They have a low gain preamp, not like Kenwood, Elecraft, Yaesu. No, it isn't a standard gain like everything else. It's down by 10, sometimes 12 dB in some of them. And so you can only use an active microphone. And they've done that since the 60s when they came on the scene. It's an electret. Most electrets are little cheap, junky things, and they don't sound good. But they have a lot of output. Well, hey, Heil, what's it? No, I want both. I want output, and I want beautiful audio. And we did it. We call it the ICM. It almost spells ICOM. It will not work on your Yaesu. It will not work on your Kenwood. But man, is it the answer to your ICOMs, all of them. A couple of years later, after we had started working with Dr. Inouye and we were into the Pro 1 series, Dr. Hasegawa came to me at Dayton. He came into my booth. He's a great big guy. He owns Yaesu, his family. I want to do it better. What are we talking about? Talking that EQ stuff. Okay. Well, you could do it better. Really. We could do a parametric. That'd be good. Not so fast. What'd be the problem? Education. Education. Why? As you just learned a while ago, we don't have 2 controls. We have 9. And so therefore, if you took a little chest of all the Yaesu owners, many of them would still be in the default mode because they can't understand it. So they just leave it in the default. Bill said, I sound real good. Yeah, right. But you could sound so much better. You have the best tool in amateur radio in your Yaesu, and you have not been taught how to use it. And I blame it on the manufacturer. I told him in the beginning, we'll take care. Well, they didn't take care. Even their manuals. I designed the EQ, and I look and I go, what is all these grab? What is all this? In the next 1 minute, you will be able to understand how to set those 9 controls. It's very simple. We have 3 filters. You saw that a while ago. There are 3 filters. Now, let's just talk about the first one. You have to set the frequency. So we're going to set that first one at 200, maybe 160, but somewhere in around 200. The next button, you're going to notch it or you're going to boost it. We're going to notch it a little bit. And then the bandwidth, you saw about bandwidth. And so bingo, we have the first filter already showing up. And there it is. Now, don't pay attention to anything of that fuzzy stuff. We're going to come back. Look on the right side. Frequency level width. 200 minus 3, 2 bandwidth. I remember the orange and the green. Just take my word. Just set it at 2. Don't question it. Okay. What's the next? Where are you going to set it? Why do you set it at 900? There's something about from 800 to 1200 and all audio. Do this to your ears. And as you talk, you'll hear this boxy sound. It's a weird, boxy, airy sound. I don't see very many people doing that. You don't believe me, do you? I caught you. There's that boxy sound. We want to get rid of it. I mean, I did thousands of shows in my lifetime. Every time we set up in an arena or wherever, we had to get rid of 900 hertz. And it could be 812, right in there somewhere. So we're going to set that second filter at 900. We're going to notch it 2 octaves of bandwidth. But now you already know what to do with the third one. It's going to be 2.5K and it's going to be plus 8. You already did it. Frequency level width. Frequency level width. Frequency level width. Was that difficult? Now, what was the first thing we're going to do? Set the transmitter bandwidth. Don't forget that. You set that 100 to 2900. Then you do frequency level width, and you're there. There's one important thing with a Yaesu that nobody else does. You have to save these particular settings. If you don't save them, they don't engage. You wasted your time. You're back to default. And it's a simple push of the memory button to hold it down. You got it. But be sure you save it. We have on our website, we have 50, 60 pages of things about all things ICOM, all things Yaesu, all things Kenwood, and all of this is there. You'll find a chart like this for Yaesu. It's very simple to go through. But here's the important part, and you have to listen to me. All Yaesus are identical. I designed them. The parametric EQ is the same from the 9000, which was the first one we worked on, to the 101. but they all have different assignment numbers. Remember a minute ago, I told you don't pay attention to those fuzzy words? That's because those are the different assignment numbers. They don't mean anything. Oh, if you want to write them down, I guess. But they're all different. One might be 201, 202, 201. One might be 401, 402, so on. Don't worry about it. You just take their 9 filters and it's frequency level width, frequency level width, frequency level width. And this is what you're doing to those. You see, the parametric allows you with those 3 filters to move it around. The red lines you see, you're going to move it up and down. You can plus it or you can notch it. But we gave you the frequencies that really, really pay. And it's all about equalization. And we all need it. Don't give me that. Because when I first came out with the equalizer, oh man, we don't need that stupid EQ. Well, I tell you what, how about you and I going back and argue with 4,000 scientists? You want to do that? No, this is not Bob Heil. I'm not dreaming this up. I learned it from Paul Klipsch and those 4,000 scientists. You want to argue with them and say you don't need them? Well, yes, you do. Where would the world be without true equalization today? And if you have an old radio that doesn't have equalization, don't throw it away. First of all, now get this, listen up, everybody. I just had this happen this morning. A fellow wrote me an email. He's got a 440 Kenwood. It was a great radio. I had one of those when they first came out. But he's trying to use one of our PR40s on it. The PR40 microphone is the widest microphone on the planet for dynamics. It's much wider than the RE20s and all. It's a much better microphone. It gets down to 28 cycles on the low end. You really have to tame this thing to put it into 300 to 2,900. He has no EQ. But worse than that, he only has a 2.4 filter. So it's not going to sound very good at all. And so it's not the microphone, it's the transmitter. But to help him a little, there are several things I want to guide you to. Sergey, UR6QW, look this guy's website up. This is an amazing equalizer, and it's not very expensive. And it's got all kinds of other things in it. You don't need the echo and you don't need the delay. I hate that stuff. Maybe the CBers love it, but we don't need that. We need to equalize properly, and you know how to do that now. Julius Jones has the class act. This is really cool. Been around for years. It's a little graphic and it works great. You notice how I've raised the 2400, rolled it off on the low end. That's a beautiful piece, easy to operate. And so if you don't have equalization, well, no problem. One other thing that we need to talk about, I mean, we could be here for days. Thank you for doing this, Alex. There's so much for all of us to learn. I learn things every day. I really do. And one of the things is things like RF gain and AGC. We have these adjustments, but we're afraid to use them. We don't know why they're there. I have a really great recording. You see, you never want to use RF gain wide open. Well, then I couldn't hear the wikis. Oh, yes, you can. What you're going to get rid of is noise. You're still going to hear them. I have a couple of really great demos and a little bit further down. Hope we have time for the other one. I'll make time. We got to do it. Listen to this signal. First of all, he's going to lower the RF gain. Notice the audio didn't go away. The signal didn't go away. The meter went away. Who cares about the meter? It's all about what you hear, listening mentally. Now, he also is going to tap the AGC. and he's going to, instead of running it fast, it's going to be slow. When he does these two adjustments, it sounds like the signal's on FM instead of all this ruckus single sideband. Check this out. This is very cool.
And I mostly just involved in right turn on the 2-meter net and the 40 and 80 meter nets, and that's pretty much what I'm limited to. I used to be on packets, but I don't enjoy the computer part of the computers at all like we used to.
Comes all that noise rushing back in. And again, it's all about adjustment of your radio. Don't be afraid to play with this. And it's just so important. But, you know, we got into building a lot of very special microphones, and Joe Walsh he'd been my best friend for 50 plus years. He wanted me to build a better microphone for his professional use. We hadn't done that in 2006. Sarah and I, we had a second home in California. I moved out there to help Joe. He needed some help in those years. And we came up with a microphone together that had wonderful pattern on the front. He said, I need to have patterns because these ball mic things, you got to stick them right in your face. Let me change the microphone here. We have to stick them right in our face, and we can't move. And Joe wanted a microphone that he could move around. And so we came up with the PR20 and the PR22. Unlike every other microphone you have, you can move this around 180 degrees and it's still with you. It doesn't lose the audio. It also has great articulation because I already put a 2.5 rise, not a whole lot. You need to add a little more. But the other thing he wanted was the fact that he wanted to be able to get rid of the rear rejection. And you do that by phasing. And that's a situation where we could spend a whole hour. Maybe we'll come back sometime in that. It's amazing what happens with phase, but very few are talking about it. But this, all of our microphones have this really great pattern. The other thing you want to think about is this guy. What is that? It's a piece of foam. No, it's not. It's an acoustically transparent piece of foam. You see, when your breath hits down into the diaphragm, and it's a very sensitive microphone as this is, your low frequencies of that air moving that down into the voice coil, we get rid of it. Now, this is not just a piece of foam. Don't go to Walmart or Amazon and buy a foam screen unless, and you have no way of telling this because most of them don't know, it's acoustically transparent. I hear guys every wonder, hey, Bill, take that stupid muff off. It's all muffled. No, if that's right, you don't have an acoustically transparent one. You'll notice that when I take this off, there's no difference except the P-pops come back. Here you don't have P-pops. You didn't lose any top end because it's acoustically transparent. It's very simple. Comes with all of our microphones, and so away you go. I mean, we're building all kinds of things. We have a custom shop that puts your call letters or whatever, and just so many groups are using our stuff today. We're so blessed. The Sirius Radio just bought 250 of our PR40s, and this. All of this goes on. That's a whole time there. We could get into the design of some of these things, but it's very important to know that all of the things that we've developed have been because of what I've learned in ham radio. And that's so important. Maybe I should I'll let you, there's so much that I want to do, but we need to talk about phasing. Phasing is so important. You see, if you had two signals out of phase, you got yourself a problem. They're going to cancel. Well, what's that mean, Heil? Well, everything in your ham radio world has a lot to do with phasing. And yet, do you read a lot about it? Probably not. Do they care? No, or they would have done something about it, written the books. I'm going to change this microphone. I've inserted a Y cable so that I can have two microphones parallel at the same time. No problem. I lose about 3 dB of gain. I just made that up. But I'm not playing games. This is my red cable I use all the time. And I have this Y cable, so I can have two of them. And they're PR22s. This is a microphone that I was commissioned by Paul Rogers of Bad Company to build for him. He wanted a microphone that was very articulate and didn't need a lot of EQ, because he said his front of the house engineer didn't equalize him right. Anyway, these are in phase. If I put them together, two signals in phase, they're going to rise 3 dB. So here comes 3 dB. Let's see if you can listen and hear 3 dB. 1, 2, 3. No, you didn't. Why? Because the human ear cannot detect 3 decibel. I want to take that away again. Now listen. Remember what I told you about listening? Close your eyes. I'm watching you guys. Close your eyes. Do this, please. Let's see if you can hear 3 dB go away. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do it again. There they are together. I'm going to take 3 dB away. 1, 2, 3. No, because the human ear cannot detect 3 decibel. You want to argue with it? Argue with those 4,000 scientists. That's where I learned this. And then I started applying and I'm going, whoa. But what happens if they're out of phase? I have this magic little plug. Then 3 is hooked to 2 and 2 is hooked to 3. It's out of phase. Okay. Here we go. That over here. Okay. Well, hey, big deal. They're the same. Absolutely the same. They sound the same. This one's out of phase. It sounds exactly like this one is not. Huh. But what happens when you have two signals out of phase? Watch the screen and listen. This is a wake-up call. Nothing. They cancel. Nothing. You will hear nothing. Whoa. Alex, I wish we had an hour. It's my favorite subject because there's so much in ham radio that
we have plenty of time when we're having so much fun and learning so much. So
we have to think
keep on
about,
going.
We have to think about this. Wes Shum came to this hobby in 1948 and brought single sideband. No, it was not Art Collins. Let me change this mic. It was Wes Shum in 1948. Central Electronics. He brought single sideband to us. And I was so fortunate in my young years. I built one of his, and there it is right there at Central Electronics 20A. I was on the air all afternoon with it. There's vintage sideband nets. We use that. 14293 at 1 o'clock. How fabulous. All single sideband and all old stuff. Once in a while, somebody comes in that's, anyway. How'd he get rid of the carrier? I mean, that was an AM rig. How'd he get rid of that carrier? Out of phase. He's got two sidebands. How'd he get rid of the other sideband? Lower, upper? He took the other one out of phase. You know that now. You just watched it happen. Some idiot piles on top of your nice conversation one day and you hit the button that says notch filter and he's gone. How's that work? It takes his signal out of phase. He's gone. How does your Yagi antenna work? I'm sure a lot of you have Yagi antennas. How's that work? Oh, it's really simple. Very simple. What happens is that Dr. Yagi in those days, he had no modeling or all that nonsense. He had a bunch of aluminum and he had a field strength meter. Put it out in front, had a boom. He mounted a resonant dipole on that boom. And then he went out. Think how long this took him to do. Just by cutting different links in different positions. But when he hit the sweet spot, his field strength meter went up by 3 decibel. Whoa, no batteries needed. I got 3 dB. He could do another one. He gets 6 dB. Wow. Then he goes behind and there he could have it a little longer in the right spot and it had rejection because it was out of phase. That's how that works. It's amazing. I built a phased array. And it was one of the neatest things ever for antennas. If you have a little bit of room, this is the way. I put up 2 telephone poles. I went to the telephone exchange company. They gave them to me. A lot of these co-ops, they have old poles that's been knocked down, rotted off, and so on. And you can get one and saw off what you need. I put 2 of them up at 64 foot. That's where the antenna was, 64 foot high, 64 apart for 75 meters. But notice what I did with the feed lines. According to the calculations, it was 126 foot of feed line. But they're connected together by these coax T's and this red delay line. See, if you didn't have the word phase in your English language, you could replace it with delay. It's the same thing. When I switched the remote control, these things were 500 feet from my shack here. When I switch it to the left, that's my driven element. The element on the right is delayed and it has rejection. If I do it the other way, we go the other direction. How simple is that? Listen up. This is amazing 2 minutes you're never going to forget. We have just completed the installation of a 75-meter phased array antenna system consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG213. In order to make the antennas directly from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43 foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried. And just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. Take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after you done mow it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm gonna have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it because if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it gets looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
The system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
Hey, Sue. Yeah, well, I see they introduced the display on it, and that is their form of portable. What that is, you wire to your computer.
An amazing antenna, didn't cost very much. And you also noted that preamp made no difference. So it's something that these are all tools that we have. It's just that you hadn't heard about them before. So that it's something to think about. That's for sure. One other thing about phasing, and this is another half hour, but why do broadcasters and pro audio, when we were on the road all those many years, thousands and thousands of shows, they use balance line microphones? Why can't you use balance line in ham radio? Well, you can with one of them. When I got in with Dr. Hasegawa, the first one we did to put the Parametric in was the 9000. It's my very favorite radio, not because of brand, not because of everything it had in it. I was able to get my way. What I mean by that, first of all, we had Parametric equalizer. That was the first Yaesu with Parametric, but it doesn't have that stupid CB 8-pin connector. It has an XLR with balanced audio, and it doesn't have an ALC meter. I renamed it. If you look at a 9000, it says mic gain, because that's exactly what that meter is. That's how you set mic gain. And you just want to see it bounce every once in a while. You don't want to see it up against a red. And so therefore, it meant something. All Yaesus, all the way through the 101, still have the preamp board that is balanced. Everything after the 5,000, 2,000, all that, they went back to unbalanced audio. I guess they didn't understand it. Well, that's quite dumb. But I know how to wire it. So when we have microphones and we spec them for a Yaesu, well, actually for all of them, other than ICOM, I spec them with usually the 781. The 781 to me is the best thing we build because it's balanced line and it's a PR40 with the last octave rolled off. That's what Alex uses all the time. You equalize that baby right and you got something. Why do I like balanced line? What's it all about? Again, if you don't take anything away today, take this. This is so important, and I'll bet you money you've never seen it explained. Here is why. When we come out of the element, we have two wires. And you, if you're the builder, the engineer, the designer, you're going to take one of them and put it to ground. You're going to take the other one, and that's your hot lead. Everybody knows how to do that, right? No, don't do that. Here's what you do. You take those two wires coming from that dynamic element, and you plug them into a differential microphone preamp, which all Yaesu, all Kenwood, all ICOM, all everybody has, but they don't use it. What's wrong with you guys? I mean, I just freak out when I see all this misuse of great technology. Look what happens. Now, pay attention here. What's going on? What we do is we put the one of those connections to the plus side. See, a differential amp has two inputs. One's a positive input, one's a negative input. So the connection of the microphone element goes into those two. One's plus, one's minus. And it joins them into a very clean signal. Now let's go back and look again, though. You see the sine wave that all covers both of them. You'll notice if you pay real close attention, the top line and the bottom line they work opposing, just like you would see in and out of a phase. But look what happens to noise. You get noise on your line. You get RF on your mic cable. You have a lot of stray RF running around your station. Oh, no, I got it grounded real good, Bob. I don't. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I'll take you into some of the best grounded stations and I will measure stray RF for you. You might not hear it, but it's there. But what happens when that noise gets onto your mic lines or anywhere else? It's not plus or minus. And so the differential amplifier doesn't see it. How you like that? Is that cool or what? Why in the world are these manufacturers not doing that to all of their transmitters? I don't understand it. Well, they are doing it. They're just selling you their junky mics that somebody else made, put their name on it, and they fooled you for years. Well, it came with the radio, Bob. As you can see, I get very emotional about this because you have a great tool sitting there before you, and these guys are not, manufacturers are not helping you. Thank you, Alex, for letting me vent some of this. And it's not vent, it's helping people. And it just bugs me to death that we don't hear more of this in this hobby. And so I hope that some of this today has helped you a little bit. It all means so much to you. And before I leave, I probably should tell you a couple of my latest. Of course, my latest is this afternoon. No, yeah, I have
Well,
been.
we have not many friends here, but I think
We have-
good, that you answer some questions. I have a question for you because I have I ordered a new radio and I want your opinion. And hopefully I didn't make a mistake. And I would love you to tell me some information about it or suggest to me to do something with that. But whenever you finish your presentation that I think you did, we're gonna pass the mic to the friends here to ask you some questions.
Okay.
And after that, I'll be the last one to ask you a question because
Okay.
I would love them to ask you the question. Whenever you're ready for taking question, just tell, okay, Alex, we're gonna
Sure.
the
Yeah.
questions.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, well, let me start with Mr. Randy, Kilo Zero Romeo Whiskey Bravo. You're the first one, brother. Go ahead.
Like being first. Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Nice to talk with you again.
Hi there.
Again, I've got not one, but I've got two of the new Yaesu FTDX 10s. And the Home Shack has a 781 in it. And the one I have here, we're actually portable down the Ozarks, Bob. We're portable this weekend. And I've got the FTDX 10 down here with the Pro Set Elite headset.
Oh, yeah.
What you just described a while ago about setting up the EQs has really made the light bulb come on, so to speak. But my question is, are those rock solid settings, or is that a starting point based upon our voice, the microphone, or is that pretty much dial these in pretty close?
Nothing is set in stone because all voices are different. All rooms are different, but it's a starting point that really shouldn't be have to be varied much. It should work quite well. Are
What
you
I
having
noticed-
difficulty?
Well, yes and no. What I noticed last night is I'm watching the oscilloscope on the radio, and I can see the peaks on the lows jumping up there, not so much on the highs. So apparently, what you were just describing, I need to notch some of the base and increase the highs, set it up to 24, 2500
Mhm.
to get the highs to come back up as well. Does that sound about right?
Oh yeah, you got to do that anyway. You always want to roll off the low end, and I know you're going to talk to some of these guys that have their rack gear, and it's insane. Your ego is really above your mentality. You don't need that on ham radio unless you're just playing. A lot of guys do it because they can. I'll give you that. But if you really wanted to do good communications, you're not going to use that big low end. It just covers up the articulation.
Right.
That's
Right.
really
Okay.
sad. Be sure you
Well,
set that bandwidth first.
Right. And I think I've got that down. I just got this rig up last week.
Mhm.
So I wanted to take it with us this weekend to run some portables. So I need to dial it in some more. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to watch on the oscilloscope. Plus, when you're doing the YouTube channel, when you go back and listen to it, and thank you for stopping in last week, by the way, as well. Then you really start to hear it can be better. So
Yeah,
anyway,
where were we last week?
well, I was at the home station. You just happened to check in on my YouTube channel in the evening on
Oh,
40
that's
meters.
yeah. Okay.
And we
okay.
just, I'm just, and then I felt so sorry for Jeff out of Arkansas who had to follow you. I think you'd already cleared. And he says, how am I supposed to follow that? And I said, just say hi.
Yeah. Yeah. 7205, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. 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 I knew your call was. You have to understand and excuse me. This is number 231 that I've done. It's
So
almost
you just
like,
got started.
yeah, that's from last February. And I talked to so many guys. I was on 2 of my big nets today, and I'm sorry, I'm an old guy. I'm 80 years old, and I forget everything. So, but I remember you now. Sure, absolutely.
Well, there's
But
two
yeah,
things
play
you
with
can always remember, either between myself and Alex. Mine, everybody works on their phonetics. Mine is Romeo Whiskey Bravo or Red, White, and Blue. And every time you hear Alex, make sure you say over.
Well, I'm an old guy. I hate phonetics with a passion. You don't need them if you have the right audio and articulation, and certainly you should be strong enough that people can call you out. But anyway, that's another. Well, good to see you. I'll have to come and pay you. What days are you on the air?
We're doing in the evenings, generally 7:00 Central. We're here on over this weekend. Since we're out portable, we're operating on the weekends, but generally just during the week, 7:00 Central, and on 40 meters.
Are you on tonight, tomorrow night, then, and all that?
I will be on later on tonight. Yes, on 40 meters.
Where are you in the Ozarks?
We are down by Bennett Springs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just north of Lebanon here, a few miles.
Sure. Yeah. Very good.
Sitting in the campsite.
Gotcha.
I've taken enough time. Very much a pleasure. Always nice to hear you again. I'll sit back and get some more questions, but thank you for your time, Bob.
Always remember, email me. Don't be shy. If you got a problem.
I did, but I think it went to spam. You didn't answer.
No.
Yes,
If it
sir.
comes,
I emailed a question about the FTDX10 and the audio, and I was like, boy, that's a fine how do you do.
if it goes to spam, I don't see it.
I know. You just answered my question, though, so I've got a good start. So tonight, I'll make sure my audio is better.
Okay.
Thanks again, Bob.
Okay.
Okay, that was great. And you know why he says over? Because I say over. The reason that I always call over is because I start in the ham radio at the age of 13, and I have a double sideband tube homemade radio, and I have to say, Charlie Lima 7 Hotel Uniform over. And that's why I learned how to say over all the time. So let's pass the next friend, which is Bob, November United 3 Queen, our good friend there in Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. But yeah, going back to what you said about audio. Last time we talked, I set the settings on my icon so like you said to do it. I can't say, but I get good reports of my audio now, and people just
Great.
compliment my audio.
Yeah.
Plus, I also use your ICM mic too, and that thing just kicks butt.
Yep.
Thanks for turning me on to those audio settings.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, because I had to explain it to the people at my club, and like, I didn't know this. Now they know.
What you need to do is send me an email, give me a club night, and I'll come and visit you by Zoom. As I said, I just did number 231. I mean, I love coming into clubs. We share so much. So send me an email and I'll be there.
Yeah, talked to my club a number of years ago, the Steel City Amateur Radio Club.
Yeah.
He talked to him a number of years ago.
But every one I do is different.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you.
I hope you got a kick out of that email saying with the Dilbert cartoon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. Take care.
All right. All right. Then we're going to have now Justin, the guy who moves the most here in the group. Mr. Justin, go ahead, man. You're driving us crazy moving around. But that's great. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I'm out of town at the in-laws, East Tennessee today. So kind of getting ready to go do some stuff. But yeah, Bob, I really don't have anything. Just want to say thanks for the presentation. As always, we enjoy it. And I'll send you an email. Maybe you can come join our club meeting sometime. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Where's your club?
Murray County, Tennessee, Columbia, Tennessee, Murray Amateur Radio Club.
Please send me an email and we'll be there.
Will do. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. That's great. And now we're going to see Kevin, Kilo 9 Kilo Romeo Alpha. Go ahead, sir. Kevin? We're not listening to you, Kevin. I know you are unmuted, but your voice is not going out. Hello?
Somebody's muted.
Yeah, I think Kevin is talking, but we're not listening to Kevin. No, he's not. I don't know. I'm not listening to him. Okay. He said that he doesn't have audio. All right. I think I'm the last one, but not the least one. I have the question for you. I used to have a Kenwood TS-890, a marvelous radio, beautiful radio.
Yeah, it was.
And, you know, it sounds great and everything. And then I actually went to a friend of mine to his house and I saw this Flex 64N, 6400N, and I like it. I'm telling you the truth. When I saw it and I saw, you know, the screen, how you can output the video and everything, it is good. And the guy sounds awesome. And I said, well, let me sell my radio. I wanted to get that 6400, and actually it's coming next week on Tuesday. I ordered last week, this week from Flex Radio. And, but there is something that I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose this because this, I bought it after your first presentation. You talk about it. And I think it's one of the best headsets that I have. So I have it for doing my CQ, my rack tuning and everything. And this was made for Kenwood, but I think I don't need any adapter for it because it has the same.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but my question is, if this one that was Kenwood, can I use this one with the new radio?
Oh yeah, yeah, it's a dynamic. That's the HC7. Okay. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And the other thing is, I saw that you don't sell the adapter on your web for the PR781, but they do. So I ordered from them. Yeah,
right. Because here's the reason. Flex has about 6 different radios with 6 different inputs, and when I say this, a lot of people take it wrong, but it's the truth. There's not a big enough market. They don't like me to say this, but for us to tool something, we have to have a big market. And there's many more people with Kenwood and Yaesu, especially
Yes.
ICOM.
That's a railroad one.
And so we can do the adapter, but the darn tooling, so some of this stuff is like, for an adapter is like $15,000. And I tell people that, oh, Heil, you're crazy. No, we're not. It costs a lot of money to tool things for production runs. And so we have to look at the benefit. We could do it, but you'd have to spend maybe $50 on an adapter. That's crazy. And they say, well, we can do it here. So let them do it. That's the best.
Okay, that's great. And so,
Because they're all different.
yeah. And then I said, I always use the traditional radios, but I wanted to go, to think outside of the box, because I've been like an old man. Even I'm 41 years old next September 20. I consider myself, an old timer, because I started 26 years ago, 27
Mhm.
years ago.
Yeah.
So I've been my entire life, more than half of my life, being a ham radio operator, always with traditional radios.
Sure.
And I wanted to have a product that is made in America. And now I have my entire set America, because my amplifier is a kit that I bought from a Miami guy, Kilo Mike 3 Kilo Mike. I don't know if you ever heard about the Mercury 3S.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a power kit amplifier. My
Mhm.
antenna is a step by R Urban Beam, which is a very nice antenna. It's the 2-element Yagi, which is made in America too. And now I have the radio made in America. So I think I have a real American station now. So, and what it has to be matching with that is the Heil sound microphone, which I have it here, which is
Yeah.
also made in America.
Right.
So I just was afraid that I couldn't use my PR781, but I just read on Facebook group that they use this mic and the results are amazing with the flex. So do you have
Mhm.
any suggestions for the flex, or just as I
Yeah. Well, it's answered very easily. Flex sells the 781. I mean, you can buy a 781 from them. They usually stock it. So it's the best microphone for that. And to me, it's pretty much the best thing for anything that uses a dynamic element. It's great.
Well, my friend told me, when you have your flex radio, if you don't like the modulation, if you don't like the radio, I'll buy it from you, and then I buy
you
you a new Kenwood TSA 90.
There you go.
Get 'em. And say, if you're that convinced that I'm gonna make it, that way I will go through. So
Yeah.
I just sold the other one and ordered the flex. So
Sure.
you're gonna listen to me over the air. They say I will sound even better.
Okay.
All right. So I think I'll appreciate that you came here today.
Okay.
And all that you do for us. We learn a lot. I know many people are on the chat watching right now. So thank you very much. And like I always says, my pleasure, and my gratitude. That's so great, so nice of you to teach us, how to work with the parametric equalizer.
Well, thank you, and greetings to all that are there and listening and watching. And we'll come back and do other things. But send me a club date if you guys have a club. We'll be there, and it's just so much fun to spend an hour or so with the clubs today. Everybody, stay healthy and stay safe, and we'll see you somewhere out there. It's, with all this crazy pandemic, you never know what's going to happen. So we're trying to stay safe, and we'll be back and visit everybody again.
Come here, son, 40 meters.
You got it. Okay. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay, 73.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.